friends are having a great time. It's not face to face, it's all online. We're all in our homes, miles away. Love them like my family, what can I say? My crafting show is on, it's my time for me. Laughter, tips and tricks, this is what I need. We're here to have fun, we're all in the zone. When crafting with friends, you're never alone. Don't call or text me, it's about to begin. I've been patient, time for me to chime in. Comfy clothes on, feeling just fine. I'm busy right now, it's crafting show time. My crafting show is on, it's my time for me. Laughter, tips and tricks, this is what I need. We're here to have fun, we're all in the zone. When crafting with friends, you're never alone. The host came on, they are truly a gem. Here for the show and to chat with my friends. Chat with each other about this and that. We share ideas, wisdom and other fun facts. My crafting show is on, it's my time for me. Laughter, tips and tricks, this is what
Live from the Sunshine State in Miami, Florida, here is the Gifted Crafters Morning Show with Nancy.
Let's have a good time. Ooh, time to get our craft on. Ooh, time to have fun. Ooh, time to feel good.
Good morning, Gifted Crafters, and welcome to the Gifted Crafters Morning Show. I hope everyone is having a pleasant morning so far, and I hope everyone is getting settled in and ready to have a fantastic time. Hello there. I see people from all over the place: San Antonio, Texas, North Central Texas, Maryland, Florida. Oh boy, Ohio, Richmond, Illinois, Michigan, Miami, Florida. All righty. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy that you're spending your time with me. And we're just going to have a great time today. Hey, hello from Canada. How are you? Okay. I think everyone's starting to kind of come into the chat. Everyone's grabbing their favorite little drink. So don't forget, grab your favorite little cup of whatever you're having this morning and get yourself nice and settled. Whether it's kind of some coffee in the morning, or, you know, some people just have a Diet Coke, or maybe you're just going to have a glass of water to wake yourself up first. Whatever it is that you have to get you going, get yourself all settled in. I'm going to take a little sip. Okay. All righty. Yes, good morning from Alabama. Northern Illinois, Texas. Hello, hello. Okay. I think everything is starting to settle in now. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Nancy with GiftsHQ, and I host these daily sessions to just get inspired and get everyone going in your craft room. So I think that today it's going to be a little rainy today in my little area. I'm not sure how it is there. I see, yeah, in Michigan, you guys are having some rain over there. Good morning from Alabama. Yeah, sunshine over in Texas. Awesome. So, you know, it's been some stormy weather, and I hope that everyone is staying safe. But if you are in some bad weather, it's a great day to just stay in your craft room and get some stuff done. So let's get to it, right? Because we got a lot to cover today. Go ahead, grab your favorite drink. If you don't have one, let me pour you a cup, because I can pour you a cup of coffee, and you just may like maybe 1 sugar, 2 sugars, I don't know. Whatever it is that you like, go ahead and grab yourself a cup and join us today, because we're going to have a great time. We also have our food truck coming along, because our food truck has all kinds of goodies that will be coming in, and it has all kinds of things like danishes and muffins and all kinds of things that you can think of, and anything that you would like to eat, and it's calorie free. So there it is, guys. There's your food truck. I know you guys been waiting for it. You can go ahead and grab all your little snacks and get yourself going, because we're gonna get nice and comfy. Alrighty, so I think you guys now have everything that you need. Yes, we have stuff for you healthy people too, so we can't forget that also. Alrighty then, let's see here. So a couple of things that we're going to be doing today. Today, I want to talk about 2 different methods. There is a little quilting kit that I got not too long ago, and this is for a pattern that's called Autumn Skies, and the kit comes with all of the fabric on here that I will need. It does have a little charm pack, as well as some other fabrics, and this is to complete the Autumn Skies table runner, and this is what it looks like. Now, in order to do this design, and this design is from Riley Blake, there is a specific method that they talk about in the instructions, okay? And the method that they discuss is basically the stitch and flip method. Now, I know some of you seasoned people already know what the stitch and flip method is. There's a lot of snowballs is what maybe some other people refer them to. And there's all kinds of other patterns that basically use that type of method. But I ran into another method that is a little bit different, and they call it the cut and stitch method. And this method is supposed to give you the same results as the stitch and flip method. So I kind of wanted to do a comparison of the two before I start to dive into my projects and start cutting up fabric and following the pattern. Because from what I understand, the stitch and flip method is a great method, but it requires a large amount of accuracy to really get it right. And I think some people really get frustrated with that, because if it's not, it's got several steps. And if one of the steps is not done completely correct, it can throw the entire thing off. And then you end up grabbing your little seam ripper and starting to take it out and start all over again. And that can be a bit frustrating, especially for newbies that, you know, really don't have too much experience and do not want to kind of undo their project several times. It kind of, you know, makes them not want to do it. Like they will have that, you know, little bit of an issue. So I wanted to see if it was true in terms of the accuracy, and I wanted to compare it to this other method that, from what I understand, provides you with the same results. So I kind of kick-started it off last night just to save us a little bit of time to make sure we can get through both methods in the hour. So I wanted to go ahead and start that. So again, we've got the first, an original method that the pattern calls for and many other quilt patterns call for as well, which is called the stitch and flip. Now, let me explain what the stitch and flip is in case you are not familiar with it. So, stitch and flip is basically taking a piece of fabric and what you're wanting to do, or your goal is to add another piece of fabric to replace a portion of the original fabric you have, so it makes it one cohesive place. Okay, let me just show you what I mean. So here we have about, I think it's a 5-inch square here, okay? This right here is about a 2-inch square, okay? If I wanted to take this 2-inch square and put it down here in the corner, and I want this triangle to appear as the corner of this original 5-inch square, I would have to cut out a piece of this original 5-inch square. So in order to do that and still maintain having a complete 5-inch square, I'd have to figure out how to put this in here. And so what the stitch and flip method does is it allows you to now go ahead, line up your fabric face down. It will ask you to draw a diagonal line going across the box, and then you would have to just basically flip it here so that it resembles that space. And then what you would do is you would cut your excess. So here, I haven't done the cut yet because I wanted to show it to you guys. So here on this corner, I went ahead and here's my original 5-inch square, okay? I put my triangle on top and I drew a diagonal line. I also drew a little mark here on the end. And it's kind of hard to see, but I'll show you up close in just a second. But I have a little mark here just to indicate that this is the part I'm going to want to cut. So after I've already sewn on a little bit off of my diagonal line, I'm going to go ahead and fold it. But this piece is going to be cut off. So just pretend this part was cut off. And then now you have this flipped over. And so you have just this one piece on top, but you still maintain the 5-inch square. So you're maintaining that 5-inch square look, but using that 2-inch square to kind of fill in that corner. Okay, that's what's the stitch and flip method. And people use this, or sometimes people refer this to snowballing as well, because at some point, once you have all 4 in, it kind of looks like a little snowball. So I guess that's where the term kind of came from. But for this method, it will require you to have one piece of fabric that's 5-inch squared. And then it will require you to have 4 pieces of this 2-inch square. Now, of course, it varies on different sizes. If you're not doing a 5-inch, you can do a 10-inch square, so that will vary. But for this specific one, if I'm looking at a 5-inch squared, I would want a 2-inch, 4 of the 2-inch little squares here on the end. And so that's how you would do this method. So let's go ahead and let's do this method first, and then I'm going to compare that to the second method, and we'll talk about that one in just a bit. Now, it can get a little confusing, so I'll ask you to kind of stay along. So I'm going to set up my sewing machine here, and before I do that, I'm going to come over to one of our segments, and we're going to just briefly go through our crafting news, and then we're going to get to sewing. Okay, so in our crafting news today, we've got people who may be near Reno this early June. You may feel a little bit of warmth. And it's just not from the summer fun. It's going to be over 160 handmade quilts that are on display at the Grand Sierra Resort. So this is just a number of folks that are in Reno, Nevada, and they're stitching up quilts. And they're sewing together with friendship and purpose and a whole lot of love. So the Truckee Meadows Quilter has been gathering together since 1978, and today their group has grown over to 160 members. They meet twice a month, and some are brand new to sewing and others have a lot of experience. But what they all share is the passion for quilting and helping others. Now, right now, they're gearing up for a really big quilt show at the Grand Sierra Resort, where they'll be displaying 150 quilts. And some will be for sale in the boutique, and others will simply just be on display for everyone to admire. There'll also be some raffle baskets. They've got over 100 of them. And they even have a chance to win the gorgeous Opportunity Quilt for just $1. So here's what kind of touched my heart here a little bit on that. So these quilters just aren't crafting for fun. They're giving back. So last year, they donated over 500 quilts to people in need, from babies to veterans. And this year, all the money that they raised from the raffle quilt will support the Veterans Guest House in Reno. Now, this is a place that gives military families a warm and safe place to stay during their medical care. Okay, so Jan, one of the members, she even says that folks who's never sewn there before are welcomed. And she said that when she retired, and thanks to the kindness of the group, she's learning something new and loving every minute of it. Isn't that amazing? That's pretty cool. And it's just so powerful how quilters can kind of get together and really make a difference in our community. So mark your calendars, because that quilt show in Reno for 2025 is already set from June the 5th to June the 7th. And that's this Thursday to Saturday. So for more information, you can go on the Truck Meadows Quilters site, and that's www.tmquilters.com. And you can get a $2 coupon off for admission to the Quilt Show Reno. For more information on that, you can also go to quiltshowreno.com. Okay? Alrighty, so now we're going to go over to Litz, Pennsylvania, where we have a woman by the name of Myrna Etson, and she's been sewing with the same machine for over 30 years. You know, she's got to keep that machine really sparkly clean. Now, it's not just any machine. It's a Singer featherweight from 1961. And of course, she would not trade it for the world. So while today's machines are full of fancy buttons and screens, she trusts that her trusty little featherweight, because it's simple, it's strong, and it's stitched with history. It's all made of metal and weighs 11 pounds. And she sews beautiful straight lines like you've never seen. And in fact, quilters like Myrna say that it's their favorite machine for piecing quilts. Is that your favorite? I don't know. Do you guys have that machine? Let us know. So what makes her story extra sweet? Well, she's got a passion for featherweights, and she shared that and passed it on to her sister, daughter, and daughter-in-law. And when they visit, the three of them gather around the table with their matching machines, and they sew together, laughing, stitching, and making memories. They create pillowcases, bags, and sweet little gifts from the heart. Now, years ago, Myrna was part of a church circle, sewing circle, where the women brought their featherweights to sew for charity. From baby quilts to kits for relief efforts, and she hopes to bring that group back one day and teach new generations the joy of making something with your own two hands. That's really amazing. Okay, so that's really a nice reminder of how old ways are still really the best. And I guess some of us can get a little bit attached to our machines, right? We wouldn't trade them for the world. Oh, wow. Cindy Bell says that she has a featherweight. It's either 1935 or I think 1961. A little typo there. I don't remember. Awesome. Wow. 1935 or 1936. She doesn't remember. Okay. Wow. Amazing. All right. So one more piece of news for you. So did you know that the first Wednesday of June is National Tailor's Day? Bet you didn't know that. Well, it's a special time that's set aside to recognize all the incredible work from tailors, the quiet artists that are behind the perfectly fitted clothes, custom hems, and those little tweaks that make us feel our best in what we wear. Now, this day goes back, way back to honor the skill and dedication of professional tailors, especially when handmade garments were the norm and every stitch mattered. So tailoring has long been a proud trade, and it's been passed down through many generations, bleeding art, precision, and care. While some big factories may have changed how clothes are being made, tailors are still making a play in keeping a big part in that personal fashion. And whether it's altering a wedding dress or saving your favorite jacket or creating something brand new from scratch, these guys can help you out and get that all done. Isn't that amazing? I think that's pretty cool. I love this crafting news and how we can find stories that really just kind of help out the community and just really make a difference to our society. I hope you guys really enjoy that. Okay, let's see. Alrighty, I think we are ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead, stick this over to the side. Now, I was kind of debating a little bit because it is a little bit hard to follow on the second method. So I'm going to try my best here. But stop me if you have any questions on this. Let's see here. Whoops, my little cord just fell. Okay. 1 second. My little cord just fell down and disconnected. So there we go. I think we're back up. Okay. So again, stitch and flip method, you need 1 5-inch square and 4 2-inch triangles. And the first thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to kind of move this over to the side, is like I said, the first thing you got to do is draw that diagonal line. Now, I've got my little Creative Grids ruler that I use for that, and I'm going to set this over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is take one of those 2-inch squares, and I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead and line it up corner to corner, okay? Let me see if I can do it on the gray side of the mat so you guys can see that a little better. There we go. Okay, so I am lining it up corner to corner here, and I'm going to take myself, I'm going to use a pen so that you guys can see this a little better. This is really just a scrap that I'm doing. And once you have that lined up, you can go ahead and draw the line. Now, in drawing the line, I like to start in the center and kind of work my way out, just because sometimes I find if I kind of drag it this way, it kind of moves on me. So I prefer to just kind of do it this way. And I think I've got that dark enough that you guys can see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I went ahead and drew that diagonal line, corner to corner. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. So once again, line it up, corner to corner. Okay. Once you have that, then you're going to kind of go back to your 5-inch square, and I want you to line this up on the corner, and you're going to just grab your pen and make a little mark, just a little indicator to let you know that this is the piece that is closer to the corner, and so you are going to sew on this side of the line, so that when you flip this over, you're going to be able to maintain that 5-inch square look. Now, here's the problem that some people run into. They may take, let me move this up a little bit more so you guys can see. What some people tend to do, if they didn't know, when they line this up, the reason why you're marking this side of the square and you want to sew on this side of the line, you're not sewing on the diagonal line. You're just sewing right beside it on this side. Because if you sew on this side, if you think about when you're flipping this over, you've got your fold here, but then you have, if you stitched on this side, you have all these threads that are going to take up space on this side of the square. And so when you flip this over, this is not going to be enough to cover the entire thing. You may come close, but you will not cover the entire square. The whole goal is of this here is that when you flip it over, you should not see any of your 5-inch square fabric at all. If you do, that means that you sewed it wrong, or you drew the diagonal maybe was a little bit wonky when you drew it. So there's a lot of kind of cons to this process because every step needs to be done with a lot of precision. That line needs to be drawn very accurately. The sewing needs to be done very accurately. And then when you iron and flip this over, it needs to be done very accurately so that you can maintain that 5-inch base shape. If you don't, you will be off. Then you'll have to start over again. And this is where I think a lot of the frustration comes in with people. So let's go ahead and give this a try and see what we come up with. I'm going to go ahead and do this end. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the other one as well since we're here. I'm just going to go ahead and mark my fabric. And that's where I want to be. Now, if you want to pin this, you can. I'm just going to kind of hold it down for right now. So let's go over to our sewing machine here. And you can see here, this is what we have to do. We have to kind of sew, not on the diagonal. You want to be off just a tad. Okay? You're going to be a little bit off. So you can see here, my sewing foot wants to line up right here, but I'm actually in a little bit. So I'm just slightly off. And I want to try to maintain that diagonal, that kind of sewing alongside that diagonal line all the way down. So let me just make sure my square did not shift a little bit. There we go. Okay. So here we are, just slightly off. And let me grab my sewing foot that keeps getting away from me. There we are. And let's go ahead and just sew this down. Okay. Oop, lost my other square there. There we go. So now you can see here. You guys see that? So my stitches are not exactly on the line. They are a little bit beside it there. I think you guys can see that's focusing a little bit. So it's just slightly off, and that's exactly what we need because these stitches are going to take up space. And so we're going to need that extra space so that our fabric can flip over. And you can see here that you cannot see the pink fabric underneath. Okay, you can see that we have, if we look at this and I kind of bring this up, we've maintained that shape. Okay. All right, so now let's do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to lay down my square here, line it up. make sure that I'm covering both sides. And then bring this over. And once again, on the side that I marked, that's where I want to sew, is more on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into place here. And I'm not going to be lined up on the line. I'm going to be lined up right beside it. And then I'll sew that. Okay. Okay. Now, let me just cut my threads here. Okay. So now, I'm going to go ahead and go over to our iron, and we're going to press this down. So you can see we've got our diagonals, and now I'm just going to flip this over, and we're just going to iron this down. And when I do that, as I iron, I'm just going to kind of press down a little bit and hold that in place. Let the heat do its thing. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I can kind of finger press that first just a little bit, but I'll use the heat of the iron to really pull it down. And you don't have to swivel all over the place. You just need to kind of maintain the heat, let it do its thing. Okay? Okay. So when I look at this particular block, you can see now why they call it the snowball effect, right? So kind of looks like a little snowball. So if you were doing this in red and white fabric for Christmas, a lot of people do these for a lot of quilts, so they're pretty cool. But you can see here, on here, you can see that I have maintained this 5-inch shape. So if I were to grab my ruler, let me scoot this over just a tad. If I were to grab my ruler and kind of put this underneath the ruler, you can see here I am at my 5-inch line. It's probably just a little tiny trimming that I can do here and here, but that's really just squaring the block. But if I look at my triangles and I look at how much space I have in between, I have about 1 inch all the way around when I look at each of the points. So I've got 1 inch going here, I've got 1 inch going here. And that's where you want to keep your eye on, because as you start to build more blocks and then kind of attach these and do a row, you don't want one to kind of be wonky and the other one not. You want them all to line up nicely. So you definitely want to be able to make sure that once you're done sewing, you're going to kind of check it again and make sure that you are exactly where you need to be. So now that this piece is done, we need to cut this excess out. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to fold this back over. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up along my stitch line about 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to cut the 5-inch piece off, and then I'm going to cut the square where I had marked off on the fabric. And that's what you want to do. So just kind of cut that piece off. We don't need it anymore. There we go. And then you'll fold this over, and this will take the place of the other 2 fabrics that were behind it there. So we'll do that on all 4 corners. I'm going to go ahead, line up my ruler, and make that cut. So line it up again, right on your seam line. That's 1/4 inch away. And make sure that you have your fabric folded over, because you don't want to cut your piece off by mistake, right? And then just kind of rotate it and continue to do the same thing all the way around. And that is what's called the stitch and flip method. But like we said, there's lots of room for error on it. It really requires you to do a lot of precision, which is not a bad thing. That's a great thing because, you know, you're able to build up your skills that way. But sometimes it's not so great, and it could be a little bit frustrating for those that are just beginning. Sewing just a straight line is hard enough to learn. But on top of sewing it a straight line, drawing that diagonal line, keeping that seam straight, you know, it's a lot of steps to it. And so you want to make sure that you're doing those steps so that you can get a perfectly squared block. So now we can come here, and I'm going to go back and I'll just give it a quick little press. Focus on those corners there, just to bring that down. And you can see here you have a very nice block. Barbara says for my slippery foot pedal, I put that thin rubbery shelf mat on the bottom so it won't slide. I know, Barbara. I do have that. It's just I move around this thing all over the place that sometimes I just forget to grab it, and so I just let it slide over. But yeah, I really should put one of those down. Cindy, if you have heard of the sewing word, a scant, this is what Nancy is. Yes, exactly. It is a scant 1/4 inch seam, and I've heard that term. And gosh, I can tell you, you know, Cindy, scant 1/4 inch can be so confusing if you are first starting off. And I think it was one of my first projects that I just happened to grab. I didn't know too much of what I was doing or anything, and I grabbed the pattern, and I just saw that it said scant 1/4 inch, and I was just thinking, well, it's just 1/4 inch. But I didn't understand really what the word scant 1/4 inch was, and I didn't really get why they wanted me to do a scant. And I ended up doing my project with the 1/4 inch, so of course, you know, and I got really frustrated because it didn't really come out great, and it was just a big mess. But yeah, that term, it's like a love-hate thing on it. Not too many patterns have it, but you will fall into some patterns that require a scant 1/4 inch. And it can be really confusing. But yeah, that's just sewing right alongside an actual 1/4 inch. Yeah. But in this case, we've got one block already done using the stitch and flip method. So now let's go over to the second method. And remember, on the first method, we used 4 2-inch squares and 1 5-inch square. In the second method, you're only going to use 1 5-inch square, and you only need 2 triangles, okay? I'm not triangles, squares, I mean, 2 smaller squares, okay? But there's a little bit of math that you have to do with this, and it can get a little confusing, but once you get it, it's really not that bad. So let me go over here and let me pull out. I kind of wrote this kind of down for you. So here's the math that has to be done, okay? So if you know that you will be working with a 2-inch square, and that's what the pattern is calling for. Your pattern is saying you need that 2-inch square here on the corners, right? That's what we did on this one here. Let me move this kind of out of the way here. Okay. So we know we need a 2-inch square, and we don't want to use the stitch and flip method. This method, from what I understand, is saying that it doesn't require as much precision as you would need with the first method, right? First method, you need to draw the diagonal line accurately. You need to sew the line alongside the diagonal line accurately, and you have to go ahead and press them out. This method doesn't require so much accuracy. It gives you a little bit more leeway in terms of making mistakes, but still end up with the same exact result. So let's take a look at what you'd have to do. So first, you've got to do a little bit of math, right? So first thing is knowing that you have to have a 2-inch square. So we're going to take that 2-inch square and we're going to subtract 1/2 inch. So now let's say your pattern's requiring a 3-inch square or a 4-inch square. Whatever the size is of the square, no matter what size, you will remove a 1/2 inch. In this case, we're talking about a 2-inch square, so 2 inch minus the 1/2 inch leaves us with 1.5 inches, okay? Now, once you have that 1.5 inch, I want you to now add in 1.25 inch to that, okay? So you'll always have subtracting 1/2 inch and adding 1.25 inch. And that's going to leave you with 2 3/4 inch, okay? This is the size that your square needs to be. Even though your pattern's saying that you need a 2-inch square, you're going to start off with 2 3/4 inch, okay? So much bigger square than what you would need for this method, right? This method is 2 inch. This method requires you, in order to end up with the result of a 2 inch, you've got to start off with 2 3/4 inch. So no matter what your pattern says, whatever the size square needs to be, drop that here, deduct 1/2 inch, and then add 1.25 inch to it, okay? And whatever that result is, that's what you're going to do. So in this case, this is a 2-inch square. If I had a 3-inch square, I deduct 1/2 inch. That would leave me with 2.5 inches. And then I would add 1.25, and that's going to leave me with 3 3/4 inch. So this is the square that you will be working with. Okay, so right now, since I'm doing the 2-inch square, I'm going to take my 2 3/4 inch square, and I'm going to go ahead and take that. And once again, we're going to take our little ruler, and we're going to draw the line corner to corner. Okay, so draw that here. Grab my little pen. Again, I like to start in the middle, work my way out. Okay, I've got my line drawn out. And now, all I'm going to do, take my ruler, line it up, and we're going to cut this in half. So, although in the first method we used 4 2-inch squares, in this method you're using just 2 of this measured at 2 3/4 inch. Okay, so you're using less of the squares, but a larger size. Okay, and then what I want you to do, once you have this all cut out, this is just an extra, so we'll pull that to the side. Then I want you to kind of come over to your square. Oops, need that one more time. And remember that 1/2 inch? Remember the 1/2 inch here that we deducted? Remember that number, because that's what you're going to mark on your fabric. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up right here. I'm sorry, at the one, yeah, at the 1/2 inch square. Here we go. Sorry, 1.5 inch. Line this up. Okay, let me rewind that. Okay, so you've deducted 1/2 inch, and then you've added 1.25. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and line that up now here, and I'm just going to make a mark, just simply making a mark, and I'm going to just double check myself here just to make sure. Yep, 1.5. Yep. Take my little corner. I'm going to do 1.5 inches right here on the corner. Okay. I'm in one. There we go. Sorry. 1.5 this way and 1.5 this way. And all I'm going to do is mark 2 little points. Now I'm using a pen just so that you guys can see it. I think it looks better on the camera. I'm not drawing a full line or anything like that. I'm just doing a little tick mark on the ends here, 1.5 this way and 1.5 inches this way. So when I pull that away, I've got 2 little marks right there. Can you guys see that? Just 2 little marks. Okay. Now I'm going to take my triangle and I'm going to fold my triangle in half, lining it up, and you're just going to finger press this down. Line that up here. Just give it a little finger press just on the corner here. We just want to kind of know where that center point is. That's all you're doing. And then you're going to come here and you're going to do the same thing. From that 1.5 mark that we made, I want you to go ahead and line up your fabric to that little tick mark and just kind of little finger press here, just a tiny little mark. You can take it to your iron, but you really don't need to. And then flip it to the other side and do the same thing. Okay. All right. Now, we know that we want to line this up so that when we flip it over, it stays in the same base shape. So we're going to line up our triangle here. And I want to make sure that I'm on those little tick marks that I made and within the little mark. So I'm going to just kind of move this over. Hold on. And I want to make sure that I'm right on that corner. So you can see if I line up my triangle, I'm lining up within the 2 little tick marks here. Okay. Now, that will tell me, am I perfectly squared? Yes, because I'm lining it up and it looks like when I flip it, my corner tip is right against the other corner here. So I should see it kind of go diagonally across. If your triangle is off a little bit, then you know that you've done something wrong and you can kind of go back. But if you just give it a little glance here, you can see, yep, my triangle's great. So now I can go ahead and flip this. And what I want to do here, let me just kind of look at this way. I want to line this up. I want to try to make it so you guys can see it. And I can see that little point that I made with when I finger pressed it. So I basically finger pressed a little box here on the end. Can you guys see that? And I want to line up my middle point right to the tip of that box. Okay, right on that tip. And then I'm checking my sides and I'm making sure that my sides are right bumped up against those where I made those tick marks. So I want to make sure that that's nice and straight. Once I have that, you can pin it in place if you like, or you can just hold on to it and then just bring that over to your sewing machine. And let's do that. There we go. All right. And now I can use my little 1/4 inch guide here to help me keep that straight line. So I can bump this up, and so now I have a little tool that I can use and make sure that I'm a 1/4 inch away. But the guide is going to help me be there. But really all you've got to do now is stay a 1/4 inch away from your corner here. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that. Okay. And so here we have our 1/4 inch, and we're ready to go here. Now all we have to do is flip this over, and you know that you are more than enough. You have, and this is where it becomes really nice because it gives you that wiggle room. Obviously, you can see here that we are way off here. We're over our 5-inch square, which is exactly what you want, because now we can just square this up and it'll be exactly covering that 5-inch square mark. So what this method does is it gives you that extra little bit of fabric to be able to not be so perfect and yet still maintain that integrity and get the same base shape that you want out of it. So here we have this here that we can cut off now, and we'll be all lined up and ready to go. And then when you go over to the other side, it's the same thing. You're going to have that extra space, and all you need to do now is trim this up. And so now let's just go and do the other side. I'm going to grab this other corner here. Once again, grab my ruler, 1.5 inches one way, 1.5 inches the other way, and I'm going to make my mark. So I'll do my little tick mark here. Oop, move that a little bit, sorry. And my tick mark on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold my triangle in half just to find my middle point and finger press that. See? So I'll finger press that so you can see where that middle is. And then grab my 5-inch and we're going to go ahead and fold it this way up until that little tick mark. Okay, we're going to finger press that. And then we're going to finger press this going the other way as well. So just lining it up to that mark and finger press here. And that creates our little box right there. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to just do our little test and make sure that this will line up. So if I go here, I can see that I'm all lined up here. If I'm looking at my folds, right? You can see my folds is right to the corner. Okay, can you guys see that? And so we want to make sure that's nice and cornered out. So now we're good. So we can flip that over because you want the points to be on this side, right? And so now we're going to just line this up. We've got our little marks here. So we're all lined up there. And you're going to just check. And I'm trying to show you this really close so you guys can see. I'm going to work in this little tiny area. So let's see if I can get this right. There we go. Okay. So you can see here, here's your box that you finger pressed. Here's your middle point on your triangle. You're making sure this middle point is right directly on that box and is right directly going across that corner. So you can see how if you had an imaginary line just going to that corner. And that's where you want to be. So your sides are lined up with where your mark is. And so now we're just going to go ahead and sew this 1/4 inch. So let's move this over here and line it up with my seam guide. It's already going to determine my 1/4 inch, and I've got my guide here that's helping me keep this straight. And so I'm going to go ahead and sew that down. Where'd it go? Here we are. Okay, and then pick this up, take off that, and now when I flip this over, and I can finger press this, you see how I have this excess piece here. And so now all I need to do is to kind of trim this off and square off my block, and it's going to have the same effect. So let me bring this over to my iron. I'm going to give it a quick press here so you guys can see this a little better. Okay, so here we are. You've got your little block here. Oop. Let me move this over to the side. Okay, so we've got our block now, and it looks a little wonky because we need to square it off. But you can see here that we've totally covered the ends, and because it gives you a little bit extra fabric, now you are really able to just trim this off, and you will have that same 5-inch base shape of the original square. So if you take the ruler now, go ahead and line it up and start trimming. And here it is. And so I'll go ahead and bring this a little closer to me so I can see what I'm doing here. There we go. And I'm going to line that up and just trim off the excess. Just rotate that. If you've got a rotating mat, that will work perfectly. And you just want to make sure that you're nice and squared. This one kind of moved on me a little, but that's okay. There we go. I think my blade is just a little dull here. Okay. And let's see here. We've got our nice little base shape. So right now I'm just lining it up. Since I've already cut my two sides here, I want to make sure that I'm lined up here and here, because these two sides have already been cleaned up and trimmed. So now we're just going to trim the other sides. So just hold it down and cut these off. And then if you had a rotating mat, would help, but I don't have it out today. And there we go. And here you are. You've got a nice trimmed 5-inch square. And so if I kind of put this on top, you're going to see that it measures exactly 5 inches, which is where we wanted it to be. And if you look on the other side, you're also going to look here and measure 5-inch squares. Whoops. And so you see here, we ended up with the same exact result. We only used 2 squares that were a little bit larger and gave us a little bit more leeway versus the stitch and flip where it required a lot more accuracy. But at the end of the day, we ended up with the same results. So it really, it requires just a little bit of math, but it's really pretty simple. Just remember to deduct a 1/2 inch and then add 1 1/4 inch to it. That's really all you have to do to whatever size square it's requiring. So a little bit of math, but it also gives you the flexibility to not be so accurate versus this is using 4 squares and it requires a lot of accuracy. So you can kind of pick and choose which method you like better, but the end result will be the same. And I wanted to kind of test that out to see if that really were true before I kind of tackled that onto my new project here. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and I was really happy to find this, to know that, there is another method that would give me the same result. Now, you still would need to cut. We still have here on the method that we have here, I haven't cut them out. I only cut the ones that I did last night, so I can go ahead and do that now, because I didn't do that with you guys. So you're just going to go ahead and do the same thing. You're just going to cut 1/2 inch. So just do that quick little trim just go ahead and trim that off. Okay, and then you can give it another press if you want. So same thing here, you still have to trim off that fabric that we don't need anymore because we've already got our base shape. So line it up, trim it off, and there you go. So same method, the cut and stitch or the stitch and flip. Either one will work and it'll give you the same results. And that's it, guys. That's what I wanted to kind of show you guys and kind of give you some alternatives in case you were wondering about that stitch and flip method. I hope you really enjoyed today's little lesson today. And I hope you guys give it a try. If you do, let me know. I'd love to know what you think and which method you prefer. Just go ahead and join our Facebook group because I'd like to see all of the things that you guys are up to as well. So if you like this little tutorial, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that little reminder button. That way you will know when I'm on every morning. So thank you all for tuning in today. I really appreciate you giving all of your support. I hope you have a fantastic day and I hope to be crafting with you soon. Bye, everyone.
So long for now, so long. Glad you stayed a while. Hope you liked my crafting style. Hope I left you with a smile. By now, keep your mind and space clutter-free. Hope your day is bright as can be. So long, my friends, till we craft once again. Bye now, stay crafting. See you tomorrow. So long, my friends, till we craft once again.